What if the handshake you see today is the dagger you never expected tomorrow? Canada, China, and Russia just made moves that could redefine global power, and America didn't see it coming. In the world of geopolitics, nothing happens by accident. Every alliance, every handshake, every deal carries a purpose. Today we're witnessing an extraordinary shift. Canada, a close U.S. ally, is now making surprising overtures alongside China and Russia, two of America's biggest rivals. Is this the beginning of a new era of peace and cooperation? Or is it a strategic Trojan horse, a masterstroke designed to undermine U.S. dominance from within? This isn't just about politics, it's about power, trust, and survival in a rapidly changing world. Let's break it down. The first reality we need to acknowledge is this: alliances are not permanent. They are living, breathing agreements formed out of necessity, convenience, and sometimes fear. For decades, the United States operated under the assumption that its closest allies, Canada for example, would always move in lockstep with Washington's strategy. That assumption wasn't just comfortable, it was dangerous. Because when we take something for granted, we stop paying attention. And when we stop paying attention, the world changes without our consent. Now, Canada signaling cooperation with China and Russia doesn't simply mean a political shift. It means a structural one. It's a profound reminder that relationships, whether personal, professional, or geopolitical, are dynamic. They require continuous engagement. You cannot plant the tree of trust and then walk away expecting it to grow without care. If you do, what you'll find when you return isn't a flourishing forest. It's a barren field, or worse, a thriving garden that belongs to someone else. Why is this important to you, sitting in your home, listening to these global tremors? Because the same principle applies to your life. If you assume loyalty without nurturing it, if you assume opportunities without cultivating them, you're inviting disappointment. Canada didn't drift away overnight. It drifted because of years of competing interests, unaddressed tensions, and the natural evolution of global strategy. And people do the same thing. They move toward what values them, what hears them, what acknowledges their role in the bigger picture. Ignore that, and you lose influence. Not because they betrayed you, but because you stopped earning their trust. This is the part most people refuse to confront. Influence is never owned. It's rented, and the rent is due every single day. The US forgot that with Canada. Maybe you've forgotten it with your spouse, your colleagues, your friends. And now you wonder why your alliances weaken, why the foundation feels shaky. It's because you assumed permanence in a world where permanence doesn't exist. So ask yourself today, where have I taken relationships for granted? Where have I assumed loyalty without investing effort? And what can I do, today not tomorrow, to repair that before it's too late? Because make no mistake, neglect always compounds into chaos. Nations learn this the hard way, individuals do too. The world is shifting and so should you. Don't cling to old assumptions, reinforce your alliances, personal or global, because trust, once broken, doesn't return easily. And if you wait for the shock to wake you up, it's already too late. Act now, because the cost of inaction is always higher than the cost of attention. The second reality we cannot ignore is this: economic power is no longer a one-way street. For decades, the United States positioned itself as the indispensable nation, the axis around which global trade revolved. But that assumption is cracking, and the sound you hear now is the echo of old certainties breaking apart. When Canada, China, and Russia start weaving threads of economic and strategic cooperation, it isn't just a headline, it's a signal. A signal that the gravitational pull of influence is shifting, and those who fail to adjust will find themselves orbiting irrelevance. But let's strip away the geopolitics for a moment. This principle applies to more than just nations. It applies to every individual listening right now. Power, whether in business, in relationships, or in your own personal growth, fades when you assume you don't need to evolve. The US economy dominated because it adapted faster than anyone else. But now, complacency has become the quiet enemy, and complacency will do to nations what it does to people: make them fragile in a world that demands resilience. Ask yourself this: how many opportunities have you lost because you assumed yesterday's effort was enough for today? How many times have you leaned on past success like it was a permanent guarantee instead of a temporary advantage? Because that's exactly what we're seeing on the global stage. The United States relied on its past dominance, assuming allies had no better option, and now those allies are exploring partnerships that rewrite the rules. Why? Because the world rewards those who innovate, those who diversify, those who refuse to remain predictable. And here's the deeper truth: economic power, just like personal influence, is relational. It depends on trust, value, and mutual benefit. Canada didn't wake up one morning and decide to explore new alliances out of spite. It did so out of necessity. Out of a desire to ensure its own security and prosperity in an unpredictable world. People in your life operate the same way. If you stop creating value for them, they'll look elsewhere, not because they're disloyal, but because they have to survive. And in a world that moves this fast, survival favors adaptability. So what's the takeaway? It's simple: never believe you've arrived. Never convince yourself the game is over because you're winning now. The game never ends. The rules keep changing, and the players keep evolving. If you want to remain relevant, whether as a nation, as a leader, or as an individual, you must be willing to reinvent yourself, to anticipate change instead of resisting it. Because the cost of standing still is never standing still, it's sliding backward. The world doesn't pause for you to catch up. It keeps moving with or without you. And the question you need to answer today is this: will you adapt, or will you be left behind? The third dimension of this unfolding story is the illusion of control. For too long the U.S. operated under the assumption that leverage equals permanence. That dominance in trade and influence automatically translates to long-term security. But power, when hoarded instead of shared, breeds resistance. It's a law of human nature as much as it is of geopolitics. The more force you apply without trust, the more others will conspire to escape your grip. And that's exactly what we're witnessing. Canada, China, and Russia are not simply forming alliances for convenience. They're building escape routes from dependency. Now pause and think about what this means beyond politics. Because this isn't just about nations, it's about patterns that govern all relationships. The illusion of control exists everywhere, in companies, in families, even in our own sense of self. We tell ourselves we have control because it feels safe. But safety built on control is an illusion. True security is never about domination, it's about adaptability and influence earned through respect and reciprocity. Consider the United States for a moment. Instead of fostering partnerships that felt mutually beneficial, it leaned heavily on tariffs, threats, and unilateral decisions. And those tactics may have created short-term wins, but in the long game they eroded trust. That's the danger of control. It gives you immediate compliance, but it robs you of lasting loyalty. And without loyalty, even the most powerful systems collapse. Isn't that the same in your own life? How many people have burned bridges because they tried to control others instead of inspire them? How many leaders lose teams, not because they lacked intelligence, but because they failed to understand that authority without empathy is brittle? You see, the illusion of control blinds you. It convinces you that others will stay because they have no choice. But here's the hard truth. People always have a choice, nations have a choice. Markets have a choice, and when they start exercising that choice, it's never on your timeline. So what's the deeper principle here? Influence beats control every time. Because influence is chosen, while control is resisted. Influence grows from listening, adapting, and creating shared value, not imposing it. Nations that understand this thrive in shifting times. People who live by this truth rise as leaders, not dictators. And the same applies to you. The stronger your need to control, the weaker your actual position becomes. The United States is learning this lesson the hard way. Don't wait until life teaches it to you. Stop clinging to control, and start investing in trust. Start building systems that invite loyalty instead of demanding it. Because in the end, control is temporary, but influence, once earned, outlives every storm. And the question remains, which one are you building today? Control that cages or influence that endures? The fourth and perhaps most profound truth in this story is that the game has changed, and too many are still playing by old rules. For decades, dominance was defined by who had the largest economy, the biggest military, the most control over trade routes and currency systems. But today, power is no longer about sheer size, it's about strategic interdependence, adaptability, and the ability to shape narratives. And that's where the United States finds itself struggling. It still views alliances as transactions, when in reality, the future belongs to those who build ecosystems, not empires. Canada, China, and Russia understand this shift. Their recent maneuvers aren't just about economics. They're about positioning for a new world order where influence is distributed, and resilience comes from networks rather than unilateral dominance. The question isn't who can control whom anymore, it's who can remain relevant when control itself is becoming obsolete. That's a hard pill to swallow for anyone who has lived on the illusion of permanence. And here's the part that matters to you, not just as a citizen, but as a human being navigating life. Because this truth transcends geopolitics. It speaks to how we thrive in a world that refuses to stay the same. The rules you learned yesterday won't guarantee success tomorrow. The strategies that built your past achievements may fail you in the next season. If you cling to them out of nostalgia or fear, you will become irrelevant. Not because you're not capable, but because you refuse to evolve. Adaptability isn't a buzzword, it's survival. Look around, technology is rewriting entire industries in real time. Markets shift overnight. Even relationships change under the weight of new expectations. The ability to pivot, not react in panic, but respond with foresight, is what separates those who rise from those who crumble. The US is being forced into this lesson because it believed dominance was eternal. It wasn't, and neither is any advantage you take for granted. So ask yourself, where in your life are you still clinging to old strategies? Where are you holding on to power plays instead of partnerships? To control instead of collaboration? The ones who win in this new reality are not the ones who fight hardest to preserve the past. They are the ones who see the future first and move toward it without fear. The real power now is in flexibility. It's in the humility to question your own assumptions and the courage to act before the world forces your hand. That's as true for nations as it is for individuals. The game has changed. The only question that matters is, have you? Because history doesn't wait for those who hesitate. It only remembers those who adapt, lead, and dare to define the next chapter. And so, as the dust settles on this global chessboard, one truth becomes impossible to ignore: the balance of power is no longer fixed. It is fluid, shifting like the tide. Those who fail to adapt will drown in nostalgia, clutching to strategies that no longer work, while those who embrace change will write the next chapter of history. This isn't just about the United States, or Canada, or China, or Russia. It's about all of us. Because the principles are the same in life as they are in geopolitics. Control is temporary, dominance is fragile, but adaptability is eternal. Every crisis, every challenge, every unexpected turn is an invitation, not to panic, but to evolve. Nations that understand this survive. People who understand this thrive. So as you watch these events unfold, ask yourself, where in your own life are you resisting change? Where are you holding on to what was, instead of preparing for what will be? Because the future does not wait for those who cling. It rewards those who move boldly, decisively, and without fear. The world is rewriting its rules right before our eyes. The question isn't whether the game has changed, it has. The question is, will you change with it? Or will you let history leave you behind? The choice, just like the future, is yours.